Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before starting the video, please subscribe and keep watching for more details videos. Coco Gauff and boyfriend Jalen Sera bond over escape room win, pose for sweet selfie, and more during Atlanta adventures. The warm June sun settled over Atlanta like a golden promise, painting everything in the city with a glowing hue of summer. But for Coco Gauff, the teenage tennis sensation turned global superstar, it wasn't just another off-season day. It was a rare, precious one spent with someone who made the world feel slower, sweeter, and entirely more adventurous. Jalen Sera, a rising musician with a soulful voice and eyes that laughed even before he spoke, had flown in to spend a few quiet days with Coco. The two had met months ago at a charity gala in New York, both invited as rising stars in their respective fields. What started as an impromptu duet at a piano had blossomed into a quiet, steady relationship grounded in mutual respect, shared ambition, and a surprising love for puzzles. Which is how they ended up inside a dimly lit room in downtown Atlanta, surrounded by vintage maps, cryptic clues, and a ticking clock. "Okay, we've got 60 minutes, Coco said, brushing a strand of curly hair out of her eyes as she examined a locked chest. "You ready for this?" Jalen gave her a crooked smile. "Only if you promise not to serve me a riddle at 120 miles per hour. Their hands found each other instinctively, fingers lacing with a comforting ease. The escape room, one themed after a haunted speakeasy from the 1920s, was part of their plan to stay low-key, yet have high-key fun. The first clue was hidden in the lyrics of an old jazz song playing faintly in the background. Coco, ever analytical from years of breaking down opponent patterns, deciphered the musical riddle almost immediately. Jalen, ever creative, spotted a hidden drawer behind a fake wall panel, revealing the next piece of the puzzle. By the 30-minute mark, they were firing on all cylinders, Coco unlocking a Morse code sequence, and Jalen deducing the cipher on a vintage typewriter. Their laughs echoed off the dark, dusty walls, punctuated by the occasional triumphant yes, and let's go. With just under 5 minutes to spare, Jalen found the final key inside a hollowed-out book. Coco darted to the locked vault, entered the sequence, and with a loud click, the final door swung open. They'd escaped. Triumphant and slightly sweaty, they high-fived, which turned into a celebratory spin, which turned into an impromptu selfie. Coco's head tilted against Jalen's, both of them beaming with the kind of unfiltered joy that doesn't need hashtags to trend. "You should post that," Jalen said, peering over her shoulder as Coco reviewed the photo. "Call it 2 brains, 1 win." She laughed. More like 2 nerds beat the clock. They did post it later, with a simple caption. "Escaped. Together. Hashtag #ADealDays. Hashtag Teamwork wins." The internet, predictably, swooned. But for them, it was never about the likes. The day stretched out like a jazz melody, unhurried, playful, and full of surprises. After the escape room, they walked hand in hand through Piedmont Park, sipping peach iced teas and sharing inside jokes. A few fans recognized Coco, who greeted them warmly, always grounded despite her soaring fame. Jalen kept a gentle distance when she posed for selfies, proud but protective. They sat by Lake Claramere as the sun began to dip. Jalen strummed a quiet tune on a travel guitar he brought along, humming a melody he hadn't yet written lyrics for. Coco leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the light ripple across the water. "You know," she murmured, "I used to think off-court time was just a break from training, but lately, it feels like living." Jalen paused his playing. "Because you're letting yourself be more than an athlete." She nodded. "And maybe because of you." He turned to look at her, eyes soft. "You've always been more than just a racket and a scoreboard, Coco. You're brilliant, you're brave, and you solve puzzles like a boss." She laughed, nudging him. "That last one's true." That evening, they ducked into a cozy restaurant tucked in the old Fourth Ward, a spot Jalen had found on a hidden foodie blog. It was quiet, candlelit, with vinyls lining the walls, and a live saxophonist playing near the bar. They sat at a corner booth, half hidden behind a plant, and ordered spicy shrimp pasta and sweet potato gnocchi. As they ate, Coco spoke about her upcoming season, how she was preparing to defend her title, the mental toll of expectations, and how she balanced confidence with humility. Jalen listened intently, occasionally chiming in with a lyric she might inspire or an analogy from the music world. They weren't just dating, they were learning from each other. Midway through dessert, A shared slice of peach cobbler. Coco pulled out a small velvet box. Jalen blinked. What is this? Jalen traced the edges of the keychain, speechless for a second. Then he smiled. You're giving me a literal piece of the puzzle. Exactly. They ended the night with another selfie, this one more intimate, dimly lit with the soft glow of street lamps. No wide grins, just gentle smiles, foreheads touching. She captioned it, "Home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a person." The next morning, both were back to work, Coco at the courts, Jalen in the studio. But the memory of that day lingered in their minds like a favorite song on repeat. Later that week, Coco posted a photo dump from the Atlanta adventure. A blurred shot of them racing out of the escape room. Jalen mid-laugh with icing on his nose from a bakery stop, their shadows long across the park path, and the keychain halves side by side on a table. No fancy captions, just, "The best wins don't come with trophies." #OffSera Chronicles. It trended for 3 days straight. It was a summer weekend in Atlanta, hot and humming with energy, like a tennis court just before match point. But for Coco Gauff, the 21-year-old tennis star whose thunderous backhand had stunned the world at the U.S. Open, this wasn't about forehands or footwork. This weekend was about play of a different kind. It was about puzzles, laughter, stolen glances, and that quiet kind of joy that blooms when you're with someone who just gets you. Coco had wrapped up a string of appearances and charity events in the city, and now she had 2 days off. Rare time for rest and romance. And by her side was Jalen Sera, the soft-spoken digital artist whose Instagram was filled with dreamy cityscapes and abstract portraits, some of which bore a suspicious resemblance to Coco herself. They had been quietly dating for over a year now, rarely in the headlines, and intentionally so. Coco had always been focused, grounded. Fame hadn't swept her away, and neither had love. But those who knew her best could see it in her eyes. The calm confidence that came from having someone who understood both the pressure and the peace. And this weekend, it was theirs. The escape room victory. They started Saturday afternoon at the Locked Library, one of Atlanta's most challenging escape rooms, tucked between a used bookstore and a vegan cafe in Little 5 Points. Jalen had found it online, booked it under a pseudonym to avoid attention, and challenged Coco the night before with a cheeky text. "Bet I can solve more clues than you." Coco had replied with a one-word answer, "Try." The room was dimly lit, filled with leather-bound books, flickering lamps, and riddles scrawled in invisible ink. The storyline. They were scholars trying to recover a lost manuscript before the library was shut down forever. 15 minutes in, they were stuck. Jalen was deciphering Latin phrases on an old globe while Coco examined the seams of a bookshelf that seemed too perfect. Then came the breakthrough. "Jalen, that book, the red one. Pull it." He hesitated, grinned, and yanked it. Click. The wall creaked open to reveal a secret study. Their eyes met. "Teamwork," she said with a smirk. They finished with 3 minutes to spare. The attendant was stunned. "No one finishes that fast. You too? Wow." Outside, adrenaline still high. Jalen pulled Coco into a playful hug. "I'm starting to think you cheat at more than tennis." She laughed, breathless and glowing. "Brains and brawn, baby." Selfies, sweets, and street art. Later, as the sun dipped behind downtown, they strolled through Krog Street Market. Coco wore a casual sundress and sneakers, her curls tied in a loose bun. Jalen sported his usual vintage tee, camera slung around his neck. They blended in well, just another young couple navigating the pulse of the city. They stopped for handcrafted gelato, Coco choosing strawberry basil, Jalen going for dark chocolate sea salt. They sat on the curb near a mural of Maya Angelou, sharing bites between giggles. At one point, a little girl walked up, starstruck. "Are you Coco Gauff?" Coco smiled and knelt beside her. "I am. Do you like tennis?" The girl nodded. "I just started lessons. I want to be like you." Coco high-fived her. "Then you already are." Jalen captured the moment quietly, not for social media, but for her. Later that night, he'd sketched the scene from memory, wrapping the image in soft pastels and warm tones. He gifted to her weeks later, tucked between the pages of a novel. As twilight bathed the skyline in lavender, they found a quiet spot near the beltline and took a selfie, her head tilted toward him, his arm around her, city lights flickering behind. No filters, just happiness. She posted it later with a simple caption. Escape the room. Not this moment. Love in motion. Sunday was all movement and music. They rented bikes and rode from Piedmont Park to Ponce.